Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, welcome to the first edition of London Calling. So with this new format, we would like to update our members on hot topics and pressing issues relating to doing business between the UK and the Benelux region. So in the next 30 minutes, we would like to keep it short. You will learn the latest about travel between Great Britain and the continent, which obviously was severely disrupted in the last 18 months and which continues a challenge, as I have experienced several times now since August and traveling between the UK and the continent. You will also get an update on data protection and the impact of Brexit on GDPR. And this is a subject which we believe is still underrated and not understood correctly by many companies, whilst it can, and I'm not saying it will be, but it can potentially be an issue for certain companies. Finally, we will also inform you about the latest possibilities in terms of subsidies for Belgian companies, in this case, who want to set up shop in the UK. So you are invited to ask any questions you have. You have a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions, please ask your questions via this platform. The whole session will be recorded, so if you want to revise or review certain parts later, or you want to share certain issues and topics with your colleagues, you will be able to do so. So we'll make sure, one, that you get the link, but it will also be available on the website. And then any questions which we cannot answer today, because we have restricted time, as you know, will be answered by mail by the specialists and panelists we have here with us today. If you have any questions afterwards, and obviously the session has been finished, still feel free to send questions and we'll pass them on to the right person. So without much further ado, I would like to welcome today's panelists, Inge Bowens, she's the Senior Lead at EUROSTAR for Business, Jane Murphy, Director and Chair of the European Data Protection Office in Brussels, and Philippe Sauvage, the Legal Director of the Belgian-Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce in Great Britain. So welcome to you all, and I'd like to start with Inge of EUROSTAR. So if Serge can share the screen and show us the slides. So Inge, I think that saying that the last 18 months were challenging is probably a bit of an understatement, but at the same time, it also has given you and EUROSTAR the opportunity to launch new initiatives such as EUROSTAR for Business, which I think is of particular interest to our members. So can you give us an update on these matters, and particularly on the frequency of services, which obviously is changing all the time? COVID restrictions, lots of questions from members saying, what do we do? How do we travel? I only want to come for a day, but I have to do a test on day 2, but I'm not there on day 2. And of course, about EUROSTAR for Business and how companies can take advantage of your offers and how they can sign up. Please go ahead.
Okay, so if we go to the next slide, I just wanted to show you that we are ramping up our timetable, which I'm sure many of you will be happy with. But we've had to be very careful with the trains that we are running, because we basically look at the demand, because as you know, you've probably seen it in the press, EUROSTAR has been going through quite a lot, as many of us have, and we now need to be very careful that we become profitable again. So we will be running up to 14 daily return trains between 22nd of October and 8th of January to start with. But we are looking at this every single week, so we're keeping a very close eye to how our trains are doing, how they're performing. So every week we take a decision to add more trains or not. So between the 22nd of October and the 8th of January, we will be running 14 trains. So that's 9 services between London and Paris, which is, obviously the route that is most in demand. And then we have 5 services as well, running between London and Brussels going forward, 2 of which are continuing on to Rotterdam and Amsterdam. So it is now possible to do a day return, which wasn't possible a couple of months ago because we only had the one train running. But we are slowly ramping up our trains, and we are already looking ahead as well. What we don't want to do is put trains on, put services on, and then cancel them. That's not our strategy. We want to avoid doing that. The airlines tend to do that a bit more than because they have more, flexibility on that. But we definitely, all the trains that are running will actually be running, so you can be sure that they won't be cancelled. So if we go then to the biggest issues, so COVID restrictions and travel restrictions. So it changes all the time, right? So we always have to keep an eye on what the government decides to do, whether anything is going to be changed or not, and it can change quite rapidly. So it's a little bit tricky as a carrier to provide the correct information at all times, but this is one of our top priorities. So on our website, you will always see the latest restrictions there. So assuming that everybody by now that is traveling should be vaccinated, fully vaccinated, so, properly the 2 doses, you can, travel is becoming easier with the conditions that we have. So for traveling to the UK, there's a couple of things you need to do. So complete a passenger locator form. So that can be done online. It's very straightforward. It just asks a few questions. And that's the one thing you will always have to do for all passengers. There's no longer a pre-departure COVID test required when you're fully vaccinated. So that's really helped. So you can now just fill out your PLF and get onto the train, and there's no test required. What you do need to do in the UK is do a day 2 test. So you have to book that in advance. The passenger locator form will ask you for that reference number. So you can't actually travel without having booked that. If you only stay one day, and I know there were a lot of questions around that, if you only stay for one day, you travel for less than 48 hours, you still need to book the day 2 test, even if you don't intend to take it. That's just the way it is, and you can't get out of that. What is good, though, is that from the 24th of October, the PCR test will be replaced with a lateral flow test. So it will become a lot cheaper. And from the 22nd of October, the UK government will provide a list of all the providers that are approved. So you'll be looking at about £20, I think, more or less, around that region, as opposed to 55, 60, 70 pounds. So it's become a lot cheaper. There's no requirement to self-isolate either when you're in the UK. So you can, you're fully vaccinated, you can go around freely, as long as you book that day 2 test, and then either you do it on day 2, or if you leave earlier, then you just don't do it, or you do it for your own, safety. What also changed, which of course you already know probably, you need a passport to travel. ID cards are no longer accepted as a valid travel document, unless you have settled status. So if you have settled status in the UK, you can use your ID card until 2025 at least. That is not always, I just want to add to that it's not always common knowledge at the checks. So sometimes, and it happened to me, I had to argue that I could use my ID card. I have settled status. So sometimes you do need to convince them as well, funnily enough. But that was at the beginning when it all changed. So everybody should be up to date with that information. But it's clearly stated on the government website that you can use that. What's also important, just also from my own personal experience, is that when you applied for settled status, you may have used your ID card to link your settled status. So now that it's becoming more common to travel with a passport, it might be worth updating that, so that you link your settled status to your passport instead. It's just a recommendation. I've done it myself because I had a query from customs where they said, well, you can't use your ID card anymore. Or I had my passport, which I showed them, and I said, oh, you haven't got settled status. I said, yes, I do. It might be on my ID card. So there was a little bit of back and forth. So if you're going to use your passport to travel with going forward, just link your settled status to that. What is important as well is that masks are mandatory to wear on board Eurostar and in Eurostar stations. That's in line with the rules in Belgium and France. So if you are coming from the UK where masks aren't mandatory, on board our services, they are. So make sure that you always have your mask with you. So if we go to the next slide. So traveling to Belgium, again, you have to fill in a passenger locator form, and that needs to be completed online now, up to 48 hours before departure, unless you stay less than 48 hours. Now, this is an interesting one because it's not easy to find that you do not need to do that if you stay less than 48 hours in Belgium. But when you look at the Belgian PLF form, there is a tick box on the form where it states, are you staying less than 48 hours? You can tick that, and then you don't need to do a test. So when you stay for less than 48 hours, you don't need to go through this. Again, it's not common knowledge. Not everybody is aware. In fact, it's very difficult to find it in between, all the information that is there, but it is actually stated quite clearly once you find it on the government website. No pre-departure test required when you're fully vaccinated, and a day 1 or 2 test on arrival is necessary. You do have to quarantine in Belgium, technically, until you get a negative result. So once you fill out your PLF, you should then get a code as a text message on your phone with which you can then go and book your test for day 1 and 2. Okay, and again, masks are mandatory, on Eurostar, whether it's in Belgium, France, UK, you just have to wear one. All right. So I would now like to just introduce Eurostar for Business to you. Eurostar for Business is a portal for companies of any size to book online on .com. So it's really easy to use. It's free to sign up. You will have all your bookings in one place. We built the portal during COVID, so during the lockdown. So it's very new in a way. We now see a lot more people signing up, a lot more businesses signing up. We see that business travel is returning, but it is really worth signing up to that if you travel for business, and if you're not booking through a TMC. If you tend to book direct on .com, it is really worth signing up because there's certain benefits that you get as well. So if we go to the next slide, you get exclusive rewards. So after you do 15 return trips, you're entitled to an upgrade. So we will upgrade your ticket after the 15 return tickets. It depends on what class of service you book in. So if you book in standard, we'll upgrade you to standard premier. If you book in standard premier, we'll upgrade you to business premier. And if you book business premier seats, you will actually get a free ticket after the 15 trips. So it's a really good benefit. It allows you to trial the higher classes of service if you haven't done so. And of course, with Business Premier, you will get access to Business Lounge, which is quite nice and relaxing. So you'll also get tailored offers going forward. So offers with partners, which could be hotel offers or office space rental or anything that is relevant to you. So it's free to sign up. So I suggest you do that. And you can invite employees as well to the portal. So first one to sign up will become the admin of the portal. So you will see all the bookings from all the employees in the company, and then you can see a nice history and, you know, of all the bookings you've made, and you can keep track of your bookings and how you travel. You can make changes on your tickets, so you can go back into the portal and make any changes or amendments that you want. Okay, next slide, I believe. So as I said, it's registering for free. So if you go to eurostar.com/Eurostar for Business, it will come up. You just sign up very easily with your company registration number, and you will get access straight away. It's worth mentioning that it's best to sign up with a business email address so that you can keep that separate. If you're a Club Eurostar member already, you keep earning those points, loyalty points for personal travel, so it's not related. So you can continue to be a Club Eurostar member, but it's just makes it all a bit easier. Before we never had a portal like that, so you would just, you know, not getting much benefit from this. But now that if you travel for business, you will actually get those benefits that I spoke about. And then once you've registered, you can just go simply to the main login page on the website, log in with your credentials, and all the bookings that you make from there will then record towards the benefits. So if we go to the last slide, this is just introducing the team. So myself, senior lead for Eurostar for Business and Partnerships, and then my colleague Michelle Marais, who's our sales manager. Feel free to contact us for any questions you have. There's the main email address as well, eurostarforbusiness@eurostar.com. So please do get in touch with any queries. Okay, that's it from me.
Thank you, Inge. Serge, if you can close the slides, please. So thank you very much. That was extremely clear. And just so you know, when members contact me and they say, what is the latest on travel, I always look at your website, the Eurostar website, because, and I also tell people, by the way, because I think it's the clearest, best explained website where you can really see, okay, I'm traveling from there to there, from Belgium to UK, or it's all split up. So it's very clear. So a great job done by your team.
Thank you.
In Brussels, London, or Paris, I don't know. So I don't see any questions, and also we're running a little bit behind. So I'll welcome now Jane. So Jane is the founder and chair of the European Data Protection Office, EDPO, and last June, Jane and her colleague Roman presented a fully fledged webinar on the impact of Brexit on data protection and GDPR. So things have changed now, especially because of the adequacy decision by the European Commission. So Jane will first refresh our memories, because it's a subject which it's not always the easiest to understand. So she will give us a short update on what was said before of the impact of Brexit on GDPR. And then she will tell us what the adequacy decision means for businesses trading between the UK and the EU. So Jane, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Super, thank you, Michelle. All right, so let's pull up the presentation. Okay, so we're gonna run through in hopefully a short 10 minutes. So there's a lot of information, so I'll try to make it as succinct as possible. Okay, next slide, please. So we're going to look at what's an adequacy decision, because we talk about it all the time, but what is it actually? What is the status now? What are the consequences? And does it affect your obligation as either an EU company or a UK company to appoint a data protection representative? And then, of course, open to questions. Next slide. So what's an adequacy decision? So you have to start by the basic principle that says through the GDPR that you cannot transfer personal data outside of the EU. That's the basic principle, unless the country to which you're sending the data, you're transferring the data to, offers adequate protection. Thus, the principle of adequacy decision. So it's the EU Commission who looks at different countries and says, okay, does that country offer at least the same level of protection to the EU citizens' personal data? And then it grants what we call an adequacy decision. The process can be very long. It takes a couple of years, sometimes even more. And there are only 12 countries now who benefit from this decision, 13 now with Brexit and the UK. So it's a whole long process. And it makes life much easier for companies. And what does it mean? It means that your personal data that you have of EU citizens in your business, you can transfer that to the UK without having to put in place additional safeguards. So let's move to the next slide so we don't go into too much detail, because I can get really carried away with this. So what's the recap now of the situation, as Michelle was saying? So since the 1st of January, of course, there was Brexit. I always say breakfast for some reason. Sorry about that. So Brexit and the UK, what they did made things simpler for everybody is they did a copy paste of the EU GDPR. Excuse me, of the EU GDPR. So basically, it's almost the same. There are a few things that have been tweaked here and there to make it specific to the UK, but it's almost identical to the EU GDPR. So we have the main obligations, the main rights and obligations and everything. So from the 1st of January, it was like business as usual for everybody because, the UK was part of the EU. They were under the EU GDPR at that time. Same obligations, nothing really changed. But there was one big caveat, and that was for the transfer of personal data because the UK became a third country. So what was going to happen to these transfers? Were they going to be allowed or not? So there was a procedure in place. So the UK had applied for an adequacy decision. And so it was decided that the Commission agreed for a period of 6 months, so until the 30th of June, to allow this transition period whereby EU companies could still be allowed to transfer data to the UK without having to do anything else, just like, status quo as things were done before. So of course, to make things very challenging and suspenseful, they waited until the 28th of June. The deadline was the 30th of June, and on 28th of June, the EU Commission announced that it had granted an adequacy decision to the UK. So we're sigh of relief on all sides of the borders. So let's go to the next slide. Next slide, thank you. So what does that mean for your businesses? Well, is that you just do business as usual. You don't have to think about, what kind of safeguards you have to put in place. However, there is a big, exclamation point or two actually that we put in there. It doesn't mean that now that there is an adequacy decision in place that it's forever and that you should kind of just take it easy and forget about it, because the general principle anyway, is that the EU Commission can review the decision every 4 years. It not only can, but it has to review the decision every 4 years. And it can decide at that time to change, to change it, to modify it, or to revoke it. So you have to, keep that in mind that in the next 4 years, things are going to happen. But most importantly, and what we see now is that UK government is coming up with these statements saying that the GDPR may be a bit too strict and an impediment to business and international trade. And so they're looking into now seeing, are they going to a little bit modify the UK GDPR or put in some other legislation that will have an impact on the GDPR? Can I just take a little sip of water, please? Because I don't know what's happening right now. Excuse me. Coming off a cold, but took the COVID test and it wasn't COVID. So to get back, so what does that mean for your business? It means that you have to keep an eye out on what's happening with these adequacy decisions, especially for the UK. And you have to keep in mind that if it does change, maybe already, think of a B plan. What are you going to do to protect your international transfers? So if you're an EU company towards the UK, you can put in place what we call standard contractual clauses. That's the most common thing that companies do. You have binding corporate rules and things like that. Also, a whole bunch of different things that you can do. And the important thing to know also from a UK perspective towards, transfers of personal data from the UK to the EU, well, that's already settled and that's been settled for a long time, is that the UK government, even prior to Brexit, had said that those transfers were going to be, and they were legal and were going to continue to be unrestricted. So from the UK to the EU, no issues whatsoever. There's no adequacy decision. It's just free flow of data. From the EU to the UK, it's based on an adequacy decision. So keep posted, on any changes that can happen on that side. Next slide, please. Thank you. So there's one big impact that has. So, the positive is that there's a free flow of transfer data. Another impact that it has is that you have to look at whether your company still needs a data protection representative. So first of all, what is a data protection representative? And this is a huge obligation, and it's something that has been almost totally overlooked by companies, both in the UK and in the EU. And what is a GDPR data protection representative? This is what we do, EDPO. It's an entity that acts as the point of contact for data subjects. So a data subject is an individual who wants to exercise his or her rights under the GDPR. And so they'll look at your website, they'll find the contact details of your representative, contact the representative and say, 85% of the requests that we get is for deletion. So they'll ask that the company you represent deletes the personal data. Second thing is that we act as the point of contact for data protection authorities. There are 47 authorities in Europe, 17 in Germany. There's one in the UK. And so they can, for example, if they get a complaint, if they have any information on how you're processing data, they can contact us to see, to ask for questions. And the third thing that reps do is keep a copy of your register of processing activities. It's a document that details, gives information on how you're processing personal data. So that's we can do a whole other presentation on that one, Michelle, if there's any interest on that. And basically, so your representative has to be based, if it's an EU representative, they have to be based in the EU, obviously, and the UK representative has to be based in the UK, and the appointment is made on the basis of mandate agreement. Okay, next slide. So when do you know if you have, if your company has to appoint a representative? So if you're a UK business, you have to appoint, you have to appoint, it's a mandatory obligation. You have to appoint an EU representative if you do not have an establishment in the EU. So that could be a subsidiary or branch. It could also be a sales office, but you have to look at every case to see if it qualifies as an establishment. So if you don't have an establishment in the EU, if you offer goods or services to individuals in the EU, even for free, you have to appoint a representative. We'll see in a couple of seconds what are the exceptions, but the general rule is you have to appoint a representative. We have listed here quite a number of examples. We'll not go through them because we don't have enough time in 10 minutes, but if you ask Michelle for the presentation, you can go through them to see if your company falls in those examples. What's important to know, the main things is that it affects, even B2B relations and business deals and business operations. So don't think it only applies to B2C. And as we said, it also applies to the free offering of goods and services. So also nonprofit organizations, charity organizations, they are all concerned also by this obligation. Okay, next slide. So if you're an EU business, oops, one slide over. Thank you. If you're EU business, it's exactly the same principle. So if you don't have an establishment in the UK and you're offering goods or services to individuals in the UK, you have to appoint a representative in the UK. Now, from a UK perspective, it's very different because businesses outside of the EU were used to this obligation, but companies in the EU, they had no clue that companies outside of the EU had to appoint a representative in the EU. And now that there's the UK GDPR, they've never heard of this obligation. So it's something that's still really, really unknown or not known or should be known. And so I think the whole purpose of doing these webinars with Michelle is to raise awareness that if you're an EU company, you do business with the UK, 99% of chances you need to appoint a UK representative. Okay, next slide. Unless, and here are the exceptions, unless you are a public authority, you don't have to appoint a representative, and that's because you have an obligation to have a DPO, which is not the same thing as a representative. And exception is, as we mentioned, if you have an establishment in the UK or in the EU, you don't need a representative because you're already present in, you know, in either the EU or the UK. And the third exception, and these are sub-criteria that are cumulative. So if you carry out your operations occasionally on a small scale and with no risk to individuals. And we've never seen this exception apply to any of the companies that come and ask us for advice, because the term occasional never applies. Occasional means that it's like a fluke, it's a one-off type of thing, it's not related to your activities, which is never the case. So 99.9% of the time, if you do business in one or two sides, you're going to have to appoint a representative. And if, for example, you're completely outside either the UK or the EU, for example, if you're in the States, you're then going to have to appoint two different representatives, one in the EU and one in the UK. Okay, next slide. So this is the biggest misunderstanding. Most common one is that, oh yeah, now that there's an adequacy decision, we don't need a representative. That is totally incorrect. You still need to appoint a representative, even if there's an adequacy decision. I cannot stress this enough, because the adequacy decision only deals with transfers of personal data. It doesn't have any impact on any other articles of the GDPR. So all your other obligations under the GDPR still apply, which includes the obligation to appoint a representative. So they're completely two different things: transfer of personal data and Article 27 representative, two separate things that don't impact each other. So look into your specific case to see if you need a representative, because it's a really important obligation. Okay. Next slide.
A question for you. So are there still any deadlines, or the deadline was really the 30th of June last summer?
For the transfer personnel data, but there is absolutely no deadline for the representative, because it was from the first day of the GDPR for non-EU companies. So now the UK companies, since the 1st of January, they have to do that, and it has to be ASAP, as soon as possible. And for EU companies towards the UK, same thing. So no deadline, sanctions apply as of, you know, those dates, as from the very beginning of the application of both GDPR. So it's very important to get a move on that.
What about the sanctions? Because obviously you speak about sanctions here, and we see, well, I know the typical reaction of a lot of companies. Well, let's wait and see if we can avoid it, because that's always an extra cost, and nobody likes extra costs. So yeah. What are the consequences if we kind of didn't?
Yeah, there's actually a specific, there's a specific sanction for not appointing a representative, and that can be up to 10 million euros or 2% of worldwide turnover. So it's huge. It probably will not get to there, and especially if you're a smaller company. But what we've seen lately, and the latest report this month, that have come out of studies of all the sanctions imposed by data protection authorities, is that they're really, you know, ramping up their investigations and their fines. So we see these one-person companies being fined, excuse me, and for the smallest of GDPR breaches, if you want. So they're really going after all types of companies, not just the multinationals. So, and there are a lot of activist groups out there also who are like swiping the internet to see if your privacy policies are in order, and in their privacy policy you should have a representative, and if they see it's not there, they file a complaint with the data protection authority. So it's really something to be concerned about.
Okay, well, as time is short, I'll leave it to that at the moment. But if members have any questions, please send them in, and we'll make sure Jane gets in touch with you and answers them. So, Jane, was that your last slide you wanted to show, or was it?
I think just the contact details and the services. But if people want to have a copy, we're happy to provide them, and all our details will be in there.
Yeah. Well, I still don't see the details, but
it's on the next slide after the question slide. So there's the services and the details you have there, but next page. There you go.
Okay. So as you can see, we have Jane and then Roman, who will be coming to London quite often as well. So if anybody wants to meet Jane or Roman in person, they can go to Brussels or they can meet up in London.
An important thing to notice, to note also, is that our offices are in the BLCC building also. So it's a one-stop shop.
Neighbors.
Yes.
So fantastic. Well, thank you, Jane. So
Thank you.
as we are pressed for time, we'll keep the last part of the presentation short and sweet. So it's my pleasure to present you to Philippe Sauvage, who's the legal director of the BLCC, as you will know. We just wanted to touch the subject of subsidies. Obviously, because of Brexit, the UK has now become a third country. And that means that in terms of subsidies, there are some opportunities for Flemish and Walloon companies. So for Flemish companies, we always suggest to go and speak directly to Flanders Investment and Trade, because they are the people who provide the subsidies, and on their website is very clearly explained what can be obtained. So they speak about a prospection office. So you can set up a new company, obviously one of the services the BLCC is providing, but you can set up your establishment in the UK and present a marketing plan to Flanders Investment and Trade, and they will provide you with funds. We had already a couple of cases this year of companies who started doing this. And as with subsidies, of course, there's always some work involved in getting your files ready and properly done. But I would say it's not too onerous, and it's worth trying if you are considering setting up a prospection office. Now, Philip, for Wallonia, the situation is different. Can you just give us an update on what's happening there, and when we can expect when we can expect that Walloon companies will be able to get some financial help as well?
Sure. So good morning to everybody first. And yes, I'm going to give you a short introduction on the subject. It's a bit different than for FIT, in the sense that the BLCC signed with AWEX, so the Walloon Agency for Foreign Export and Investment, as you probably know. We signed an agreement with AWEX in order to allow Walloon companies to explore new market in the UK by using the services of the BLCC, which offers, as we probably know, locally hosting and supporting companies at reduced prices. So what is it exactly? The agreement will help Walloon companies to anchor their business in the UK market within an incubator, which is going to be defined here to be us, the BLCC, with our club office, which is the co-working spaces we have in London. We have 4 locations, and the biggest one being, as you probably know, off Trafalgar Square, Northumberland Avenue. So therefore, there will be an envelope of subsidies, and the AWEX will then offer through the BLCC as an incubator financial help to these Walloon companies. It's going to be really short here because we've signed the agreement, but like everything in terms of, having everything put in place and officially done with the Companies House in Belgium, everything needs to be officialized. So I talked to AWEX earlier this week, confirmed that everything should be official on the how do you call that, in Belgische Staatblad. So yeah, I don't even know how to say it in English.
Belgian Official Gazette.
Yes, here we go. Thank you, Jane. So it'd be probably official from the 1st of Jan 2022. So we have the agreement signed, so it's going to happen, but we need some paperwork to be done in Wallonia to be up and running from the 1st of January 2022. So in terms of who will be able to benefit from the financial assistance, it would be any company with a main operating office in Wallonia, pursuing an international project, generating added value for the Walloon economy. So the financial help will be defined as helping Walloon companies with a flat rate subsidy covering 50% of costs of renting the office space for a period to 3 to 12 consecutive months. Being obviously the presence should be effective within the incubator, so within the BLCC in one of our co-working space club office. The conditions, obviously, AWEX will have to look through the criteria, like if you actually, the head office is actually in Wallonia, it's going to be an added value for the Walloon economy, all these things, but everything should be sent, all the documentation should be sent to AWEX before the opening of the office. But if the Walloon company falls into the conditions, there will be no problem to get subsidies and have a presence in the UK for 12 months at least. So for more information, you can actually contact me and I will send you the link to the main description of the subsidies. There will be soon a special dedicated page to the BLCC as the incubator for Walloon companies. But again, it should be in the next 2 months or so. So hopefully everything will be up and running with really a description of how we can help Walloon companies with them spending as less money as possible because of the subsidies. So that would be probably in the next couple of months. Here we go. That's it. If you have any questions, just drop me a line.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Philip. And we have gone over time. So London Calling is supposed to be concise and short. So I will not keep you any longer and keep our promise. But well, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much to the panelists for their time and their professional and very clear advice, I must say. It was, well, I think a great first session. So we will come back to you with updates as we go along. And I wish you a very good working day. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.